Yes, sir. We have, let's see, Mr. Garrett, Ms. Carter. Yep, there we go.
And Griffin.
Mr. Lies, Kent Griffin.
Sure. It has been told I've been sick over the last couple of days. Be safe out there. COVID is going around.
Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm just fatigued today. I overexerted myself yesterday and today, and got myself we're gonna make it. The quorum with we got 3 in the room, correct?
4. We have 4 in the room, so we have a quorum.
Yeah, perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. Today is September 3rd. It's now 2 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get this meeting called to order, the Audit and Finance meeting. The first thing on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. We'll move forward to the approval of the minutes from the August 8th, 2024 meeting. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Yeah, to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Have it. Our first action item, which will be the general obligation bonds resolution. Mr. President, will you be presenting that?
Yes, sir. First item for your consideration is a motion to recommend approval for a GO bond resolution, Series 2024, principal amount not exceeding $120 million. What this does is serves 2 purposes. It's planned issuance of debt throughout the year. It pays off the FCO bond anticipation note that was issued back in the spring, as well as makes payments on our installment purchase revenue bonds that are due December 1st. So request your consideration of approval to recommend that to the board for approval. We also have bond counsel engaged on the meeting today if you have any other questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Prentice?
No questions, no issues with it, but I'm going to recuse myself from voting on it.
Is that Mr. Garrett?
None.
I missed that. Who was that? Who recused?
Sorry, this is Michael Hallis.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have one recusal, and we take that up after the public comments. Any further questions?
Nope.
All right. Hearing none, let's go ahead and move forward to the 2023-2028 capital program reallocation.
All right, we have one request for reallocation, serves 2 purposes, one of which is to allocate additional revenues to the new D10 middle school project in the amount of $8.25 million. The other purpose is to provide funding for a change order for the Hersey Montessori project in the amount of $850,000 as associated with bus loop and parking lot change order towards the end of the project. So grand total there of $9.1 million within the Phase 5 sales tax.
All right, thank you. I have one question, but I'll save it for last. Do we have any questions on this matter? All right, Ms. Shaw, if you're on the line, can you detail a little bit more about the West Ashley project?
Yes, sir. So the last time that we did an allocation requesting funding for construction cost installation or escalation, excuse me, was back in October of 2022. And so for this particular project, we are bringing this project up to current construction market values. Back in 2022, we were seeing costs along the lines of about, I want to say 254 or 200 and between 254 to 298, roughly about $300 per square foot, but we're now seeing it at $400 per square foot. So we're bringing this school up to current construction values.
All right, so is it what are we looking at because it's taking long to break ground or whatnot that is that we keep going up to the higher value?
No, it's just the cost of materials, the cost of fuel to transport commodities from across seas, different things such as that, that's causing everything to go up across the board. But it's not anything associated particularly with the project.
Right, right. And we're not delayed, correct?
That's correct.
Mhm. All right. Any further questions? All right, thank you. Hearing none, let's go move forward to 3A, the public comments. Do we have any in person or online?
No, sir. No public comments online, and I don't believe we have anybody in person.
Well, let's go ahead and move forward to 4A, which would be the vote for a general obligation bond resolution as presented by Mr. Prentice. Do we have a motion to approve the general obligation bond resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion, second. We have a motion and a second. And please be noted that we have one recusal for this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let's move forward to 2B, the 2023-2028 capital program sales tax budget reallocation. Do we have a motion to approve the reallocation of funds as shown in the attached resolution? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. Those will move forward to the board for consideration. Now let's move forward to our information items. 5A, CCSD procurement AUP report.
Yes, sir. We have Ms. Emily Sobchak, who's a partner with Green Colley, here today to present the procurement agreed upon procedures report for you and take any questions.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Emily Sobchak. I'm with Green Colley, and I'm here to present the results of the procurement agreed upon procedures that were performed for the year ended June 30th, 2024. Next. I think it's important for you to understand that this engagement is significantly different from our financial statement audit. An agreed upon procedures engagement is performed. We are asked to perform specific procedures. We perform those procedures and present the results, as opposed to an audit where we are issuing an opinion on your financial statements and using professional judgment in determining the procedures performed. These procedures are performed in order to comply with state law. State law requires all school districts with budgeted expenditures greater than 75 million to have procedures done over their procurement department. The state Office of Procurement actually designs these procedures and tells Charleston County School District and all other large districts across the state what procedures are required to be performed. Like I said, these are determined by the State Fiscal Accountability Authority, and we are simply presenting the results of the procedures. So the procedures really cover a large scope of your procurement department, but it's not intended to be a deep dive of the compliance related to the procurement code. This is simply a high-level engagement, but it does cover multiple areas. We reviewed 55 procurements of supplies and services, IT and consultant contracts. We reviewed 3 major construction procurements and 2 architectural and engineering procurements. We also reviewed 49 sole source and 6 emergency procurement transactions. I will also note that these sample sizes are also determined by the state. Some of the other areas that we looked at, we reviewed procurement card transactions, looking at 2 months of activity as well as 25 individual transactions. We reviewed 25 direct expenditure vouchers. Those are checks issued without a PO. We reviewed 10 procurement ratifications, and we also reviewed 8 surplus property sales. There were 2 findings related to our procedures. These are going to sound a lot like what we reported last year, as we did have 2 similar findings again this year. The first is related to your minority business enterprise utilization plan. The district's procurement code states that the plan will be presented to the board for the current fiscal year no later than the first meeting after July 30th of each year. Your code also states that results will be provided to the board semi-annually within 30 days of period end. So you should be getting results in July and in January each fiscal year, letting you know how you're doing compared to your plan. There was, of course, turnover in the Director of Procurement in that position this year, and the plan was not presented until April of 2024. So that's the fiscal 24 plan was not presented until just a couple of months shy of year end. And the results of the plan were also not submitted to the board in accordance with the code's timeline. Looking at the next finding, this relates to your reporting of sole source and emergency procurements. Your code states that all sole source and emergency procurements will be reported to the superintendent semi-annually. And again, that was not done for fiscal 24. I will note that with both the MBE plan and with the sole source and emergency procurements, since these findings have been identified to the district for fiscal 24, the MBE plan has been prepared and will be coming to the board, I believe, at the next meeting. And the sole source and emergency procurement reports were also prepared and provided to the superintendent. So while it's disappointing to have the same findings 2 years in a row, I am encouraged by what we've seen since discussing these with management. And I know with the Director of Contracts and Procurement position now being filled, I'm sure that these findings will be resolved and I won't be reporting the same items to you next year. Also, just like to remind you again that we were performing specific procedures identified by the state. And if we had expanded our procedures or done a deeper dive into procurement, then of course, there may have been items that might have come to our attention that, of course, we would have reported to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Very much. Do we have any questions?
I do.
Ms. Robertson?
Yes. What constitutes an emergency procurement?
So an emergency procurement is a procurement that needs to be accomplished so quickly that there is not time to go through the competitive bid process. It should be a procurement that is a true emergency, not a failure to plan. But for example, if a storm comes through and destroys a school's HVAC system, then of course that needs to be addressed immediately. So items like that due to true emergencies.
Can you give us examples of what CCSD emergency procurements were?
I don't have the details of the procurements at hand, but I'm happy to provide those after the meeting today. I can tell you that they were those types of situations where the health and safety of your students was at risk should the procurements have not gone through as emergency rather than being going through the competitive bid process.
And Ms. Robertson, I do have that report. Be happy to share some examples of that in the sole source with you now that that's been prepared and will be prepared routinely.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is about the expanded, I guess, audit. The areas that you looked at, the AUPs, you said they were selected by the state?
That's right. They are required by the state. So the state puts together a listing of all of the procedures that are required to be performed. And those are the procedures that we perform and report on.
The procedures. So who picked which group you actually looked at?
So my firm selected the individual transactions when only a sample was selected. There were some areas, for example, with the sole source and emergency procurements, as well as ratifications, we did look at 100% of the transactions that occurred during the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? All right, here and now, we appreciate your report. And Mr. Prentice, could you please send us out some of those examples for us?
Can you repeat that, sir? You were asking to send you which report?
The report that Ms. Roberson was just asking about for particularly the two emergency transactions.
Yes, we can follow up with that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We will now move forward to the SWMB report for 2024.
Yes, sir. So this item 5B, the SWMB year-end utilization report, is very similar to what we presented back in April when I came into the organization and realized that this hadn't been updated in some time. We wanted to give you some interim reporting before the end of the fiscal year. And now that the board has approved the SWMB administrative rule and SWMB policy for the year, this is the first true report pursuant to the requirements of that policy. So the data in this report does overlap what you've already seen. What we showed before went through March. This runs from July 1 of 2023 through June 30th of 2024. So is the entirety of fiscal year 24's data, unaudited, of course. This is, the results from our financial system without any final adjustments being made through the audit process following the policy. But as you'll note on that report, we had some $457 million of overall non-salary spend, broken down between purchase orders of $285 million, capital of $122 million, and P-card spend of $50 million. And of that total, 13% of it was small women minority business enterprise certified compliant, and that exceeds the policy requirement in the state procurement code of 10%. I will note, and I shared this during the agenda review, that if you include SWMB vendors that don't currently have certifications, that percentage actually increases to 23%. So a lot of our continued mission, in addition to complying with the policy, is vendor education and ensuring that these businesses have an opportunity to go through the certification process. Because if they can get certified, then all the spend that the district completes with that vendor would then move over to the eligible certified columns and would count towards the actual vetted percentage. So just wanted to show it both ways in terms of how it was reported, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? I have one question, Mr. Prentice. Is there a cost associated with becoming SWMB certified?
I'm not aware that there is. I think it's just an administrative process through the state. And there's some forms that have to be filled out. I'll check and see if there's actually a filing fee associated with it, but there's not a cost of going through that process.
Right, because I'm looking at that 10% that we have at 23, that takes us up to 23%. And I'm wondering what could hinder some of these businesses from going through the process, whether it's just the paperwork involved with it, whether there's a fee that's involved with it, or whether they don't even see the use or is it just useful for us for them to be somebody certified. So I was just thinking about the extra 10% and what further outreach could happen either from the state side or even locally that can encourage more people to become SWMB certified.
Yes, sir. And if you look at the application, if you go on the small business contracting and certification department website, it's smbcc.sc.gov. The application is on there, and there's a laundry list of items required, including certification of personal wealth, corporate business tax returns for 3 years, and a number of other items. So I could see it being cumbersome for a small business without the administrative capability of pulling all of that together, and especially with the lack of understanding of the benefit that it could provide the firm. So when we come into contact with those, we continue to push that information and make sure they have the resources that they need, or at least know where those resources are.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Prentice. Moving forward, we will go to our purchases and contracts greater than $250,000 list.
So for the month of July 15th through August 15th, now that we're running that monthly sequence, we're starting with the 15th of the month and running to the 15th of the next month. The total spend of contracts and procurements over $250,000 was $4.9 million. There were 2 competitive procurements, one of which was to Maverick Construction for Baptist Hill exterior appearance upgrades. That was a new contract that was awarded in the amount of $270,000. And then we also had a change order to a contract for the early college Hampstead Mall renovation in the amount of $415,000. And I believe that was associated with some of the final work and fencing that was performed in closing out that project. On the second page, we have 8 different items associated with existing contracts and alternative means of procurement. Majority of these were existing CCSD contracts, exemptions, and sole sources. I'm happy to answer any questions about those if anyone has any specifics.
All right, thank you. I do have one question, but do we have any further questions? All right, Mr. Prentice, my only question for the Hampstead Mall, do we own that or is that owned by the city?
This is Jeff Broey. Mr. Calhoun, we own that property.
Okay, perfect.
There's the park includes 4 quadrants, and we own the one closest to Early College.
Okay, and the city owns
The old Fraser campus.
Right, and that's what I was wondering. So does the city own the other 3 quadrants?
No, Trident Tech owns one of them, and then the city owns the other 2.
Okay, those are the 2 furthest away, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, so we're only working on the part that's on our area, correct?
You are correct, sir.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Barrow and Mr. Prentice. We will now move forward to our monthly financial report.
Yes, sir. So we have the July 31st, 2024 monthly financial report. This is the first monthly report in fiscal year 2025. What we've done here from past years is we've kept the format the same as what we present to the board each and every month now with some of the revisions that have been made. So very minimal information to share at this point in the fiscal year. Our variances on revenue, budget to actual are trending very closely to the budget. We've just received a couple of small payments and line items that aren't budgeted within the breakdown of those major categories that are rolled up in that report that we've shown there as variances over the approved budget for estimated year end in the amount of $285,000, and all of our expenditures are tracking to budget. So each and every month as we move forward, we'll continue to refine the report. And as I've also promised, we'll expect to receive the final numbers from the Charleston County Auditor's Office on property taxes later this month. I actually got the preliminary report this morning. It lines up very closely within about $3 million of our revenues for FY25 as budgeted. So we were very, very close to being right on the money. They were $3 million over what we had budgeted in general operating fund for FY 2025. So once I've signed off on those numbers, we'll update the long range model and provide a subsequent revision to the board going into October. I can take questions now, but I do also have the new WSF dashboard with information loaded into it. So I'm happy to present that. Take questions at the end. So if you reference the other attachment, we also now have the WSF report for July. This dashboard is a live dashboard similar to the 250,000 list that we're working on that's exported through our system that our business intelligence team graciously put together for us. So the first page shows you a pie chart, which is very colorful right now, with the amount of funds remaining as a percentage by location within each learning community. The second page and the third page shows the percent spent by each learning community in each school location broken down. And what that's just intended to show is the amount that's been expended and encumbered added together as a percentage to show how much has been committed of those funds. And where you really get into the detail is on the last few pages. So what we've shown is by location, the actual budget that's approved for the location, the amount that's been allocated. So what ties to the allocated column would be tied to the assurance form that the school submitted to their level leader that was approved and sent up to finance for allocation. What's encumbered would be, for example, a position that's been filled or a contract that's been executed where a PO has been issued. The next column is what's been expended to date. And then the following column is the available budget net of all of those calculations. And so if you go to the very bottom, you can see that of the $34.2 million budgeted for WSF, which includes the hold harmless funds for the additional $3,000 in compensation increases approved by the board over the $5,000 that was originally contemplated, $32.4 million has been allocated on assurance forms. So a very strong percentage of allocated dollars to budgeted dollars. $21.2 million of those have been encumbered. And just over the last month, $994,000 has been expended. And what's important to note there, of course, is that these new positions in the WSF, they didn't receive their first paycheck until the last day of August. And so there's only one pay period reflected there. And by the time you see the next report, you'll see a full additional month's worth of data So after all of that's considered, there's just over $12 million remaining to be encumbered. The allocations for the most part have already been made. And one final note that I'll point out, as I know the question has come up in the past, the first line on this report on the fourth page is location 0127, which is district-wide accounting. And what that is that's the hold harmless dollars for the difference between the 5,000 and the 8,000. It just needs to be allocated out to those individual locations. That was done at the end of the budget approval process. And so over the next month, those dollars will be moved to each location based on the approved positions that are in place. And you'll see that number decrease and disappear. So just wanted to make sure that was called out for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Prentice. Because I was getting ready to ask, and I'm sure Mrs. Robertson was getting ready to ask about various schools account as well. So before we move forward, do we have any questions?
I do.
Ms. Robertson.
Ms. Huggins, without naming the school, I'm going to talk, I guess, as general as possible. And I guess my question is, without getting in the weeds, it's about the, I guess, the base formula. Years ago, schools had concerns because they projected a certain student enrollment. And then when they didn't meet it by 2 students, 3 students, 5, they lost FTEs for such small amount of students. So I guess for me, I'm only speaking for me, we got caught up in the WSF, and should we have been talking about the base formula as well? Because this particular school that I'm talking about, the WSF worked for them, but they still lost a 0.5 because of the enrollment numbers, excluding, the CD and Head Start. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around what did we miss, if we missed something, because it seems like we still have that same issue of if you project enrollment and you miss it, you have your WSF, but it still didn't work. Does that make sense?
It's a great question. Thank you, Ms. Roberson, for asking that. We sat down, Mr. Prentice and I, and several of the chief level officers, Dr. Clamp, Mr. Brigman, and the associate superintendent sat down with each associate superintendent and principals to go through their list. Well, associates had been through the list with principals prior to the meeting. And typically, if there were only 2 or 3 students that a school missed, they were held harmless. We can look again at the individual situation. I think I know which school to which you're referring.
Okay.
We tend to hold harmless schools that are only missing 1, 2, 3 students.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that they're not impacted in some way, but typically they're not impacted incredibly negatively. However, this year we do intend to take a look at the base allocation formula in general. We couldn't do both that and the WSF all at once because it would, as broken the budget. For example, right now, in complete transparency, we're already beginning to do that. Mr. Prentice has already cost out. In fact, he sent me the amount today that it would cost to take our guidance counselors from 190 days to 210 days, which I believe is necessary across the system to positively impact student achievement. That's at a cost of $2.1 million for the FY26 budget, for example. So we're already taking a look at those things as we plan thoughtfully for the new year. So the answer is we're looking into it with the knowledge that there do need to be some base level adjustments to the allocation process formula.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. I think principals will be thrilled to hear that we already know the cost for the 190 to 210, although Mr. Prentice just gave me a smile and turned his head the other way because it is rather costly to do some of the things that we know we need to do.
Yeah, but as a former director of school counseling program and school counselor, it is necessary. There's so much to do before school and after school that they can't get done. So I'm glad that you are looking at that.
Yes, ma'am. That's one of the things that has consistently come up in our school data reviews with principals in regards to the base allocation formula. There's a question also at the elementary school about the student to pupil to teacher ratio, for example. There's some fine arts concerns in the middle schools. So I could rattle off
Yeah.
a short list of things that I know is concerning to principals across the system, but we'll be looking at that more generally this year as we plan for the FY26 budget planning.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, I have three observations. The first, since we were just talking about the allocations right there, are we taking a look at the allocations of our assistant principals at our programming schools as well? Like moving up from the 210 up to like the 210 to 220 or 222 is the next one, I believe.
So we'll be taking a look at the allocation formula in general, which includes how we allocate teachers, how we allocate administrators, what earns you a bookkeeper and a clerk, what all sorts of things in regards to staff personnel. Yes, sir. As we take a look at that whole process, each facet of that will be examined: administration, teachers, and classified employees.
And I think Mr. Prentice answered my second question, which would have been looking at how the schools are actually getting the funding. They're not just getting a check put inside their account. They actually have to submit the invoices for their conferences that they put in for it to be spent out, correct?
Absolutely. Mr. Prentice can go to a little more detail, but the dashboard, as you know, that he and team have developed, actually budgets things down to the cent to date. And it shows how many things have already been encumbered, how much has already been spent, et cetera. Mr. Prentice?
Yeah, so Mr. Calhoun, you're correct. They're not getting a check or an allocation directly to the school level. This works just like the general operating fund does. We just set up a separate fund within our financial system to account for it very specifically, but they can enter a requisition to receive a purchase order through the same channels, which makes it much easier to administer. They can also go through human resources to fill a position or request to recruit a position that's vacant through the same channel. So everything works exactly the same, and it is all trackable through our financial system. And this is one of a few reports that we've set up to be able to keep a close eye on it. It was as part of the goals and guardrails of WSF from an administrative standpoint when we were going through the budget process.
Perfect. And the last thing, we're gonna put the WSF into the original financial report because it's already within the purchase services and expenditures or whatnot.
So it's actually not in the other financial report because it is a separate fund. So and since it's a separate fund, we had to report it separately. The thing about this too is the revenues are transferred from the general fund. Because it's all just a transfer out from the general fund and a transfer into the WSF fund. So when you look at the actual financial report for July, and you look at the transfers line item, the second to last line item under expenditures, that accounts for the $34 million that's moved over to the WSF, and then it just establishes itself over there.
Perfect. And my final question would be about West Ashley High School. C. Williams High School, the 6th grade academy, and the 7th and 8th, because they're still up under the same line. How are they working together in order to see what services and how much is expended between both schools? So would it be if we were to break it down from like the 6th grade? Oh wait, never mind. I see it. The 7th and 8th and 6th grade. So they do have two separate lines on here, but on our original sheet for I guess the original expenditures, what the original budget book, they're still up under one line.
So I think that was addressed during the budget process. So it might have been presented very early on as one line, but we decided to split it out. So we took the total pupils in poverty, students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and created the total amount for all three grades, and then divided it 33.3% C. Williams North and 66.6% C. Williams South. And then, of course, those principals encouraged to work together with their level leader to come up with programs that would benefit, the entire school as a whole and within the system.
Yeah, I see it split out here. All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Those are all the questions that I have. Do we have any further questions? Hearing none, I appreciate that. Let's move forward to Ms. Costello to our monthly capital projects report.
Thank you, and good afternoon, committee. I'd like to present the July 2024 capital projects report. I'm happy to introduce to you the new format for the monthly capital projects report. All pertinent and essential financial information continues to be reflected. However, the reallocations notes sections have been filtered out from the previous version of the report. All board-approved reallocations will continue to be tracked internally by Capital Projects Accounting for transparency and audit purposes. The most recent sales tax collections, which is for June 2024, which is our 18th month of collections, were $756,000 below the 2% projection of cash flow. Before I review the expenditures for the month, I just wanted to review that at year end, we do have to accrue June expenses in that current month, and then they're reversed out in July. The 2010 through 2016 capital building program had 0 expenditures. The 2017 through 2022 building program had $172,000 in expenditures. The 2023 through 2028 building program had $1.1 million in expenditures. And lastly, the 2023 through 2028 long-term debt program had $315 in expenditures. The fixed cost of ownership 24 is winding down. The fixed cost of ownership 24 has been kicked off and moving quite rapidly. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Ms. Costello, I don't have any questions, but let me just say that this format is much friendlier to the eyes. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Costello. Do we have any further questions? All right. Hearing none, let's go ahead and move forward to our last item. Excuse me, which would be our monthly ESSA report.
Yes, sir. It's the last information item. We have the ESSA report for the month ended July 31st. If you see on the very last page, we had $294,000 in expenditures in the month of July and $482,000 in encumbrances, which leaves us with $3.9 million remaining. We've been reimbursed $149.9 million to date. So we are going through our final review, as we've discussed, of eligible positions that were previously funded by ESSER and journaling those salaries over to be paid with ESSER funds for the first quarter of FY25 so that we can spend those last dollars thoughtfully on their allowed purpose in order to be able to close out. So you'll get a report that'll show some of that in October as of the end of August, and then you'll get another report in November, which will show through September 30th with the ESSER closeout. And then there'll probably be some form of closeout reporting that will show as we go through the final process, the audits, and all of the other steps to close ESSER down completely. But we're getting very close to the finish line. We know exactly what we have remaining. Like, for example, one of the encumbrances is a big furniture purchase at North Charleston High School that we're just waiting to receive. And there's been some allowances on timeline for delivery for those. So we're working through the final details to close ESSER out and look forward to sharing the final results in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we ayes have it. This executive session will go over a constituent District 10 contractual matter. We are now in executive session. Test, can y'all hear me in there? Let me know if y'all can hear me in there.
Yes.
We have everybody back from executive session. May I get a motion to go into open session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right, so out of executive session, this will be a motion to approve the constituent district 10 contractual matter to the board for approval. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the negotiation of real estate contract per staff recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the ayes have it. This will move forward to the board for further discussion. The next thing that we have will be our upcoming meeting, October 1st, 2024. Self willing, I will be there in person. So if we have no further thoughts, concerns, or prayers, we will move forward to our adjournment. I move to adjourn and see you all on October 1st.
Yep.